Labor is kind of like a marathon, and you probably wouldn't show up to a marathon without having done any kind of training or preparation and expect to win. So today I'm going to be telling you about all the different ways that I mentally and physically prepared for labor and birth. Hey, I'm Amber. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title, today I'm going to be sharing with you the different ways that I prepared for labor and birth, as well as what I would do differently. Mostly meaning like, would I recommend each of these things and would I do them again for future births? Because I'm a little bit type A, and so I did a lot of different things to prepare myself. So let's just jump right into it. The first thing that I did kind of early on in my pregnancy actually was I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, which I actually have right here. It's not a huge book. I think it's around like 400 pages. Yeah, a little less than 400 pages. In the first half of the book, she has positive birth stories, home birth and hospital births. And then in the second half of the book, she talks about the whole process of labor. Like, she goes really in depth, and then she gives all kinds of like coping techniques, different positions, ways to deal with fear. It's a really good book. So I absolutely would recommend anyone who's pregnant, regardless of how you plan to give birth, read this book. It is so good. It's so empowering. Don't skip the first half. I initially thought that I was going to skip the birth stories because I just wanted to get to the really technical stuff, but don't skip it. I read a couple of those birth stories and then I was hooked, and I loved reading those. I kind of had like a little routine where every morning I would make my cup of tea and then I would read one or two of the stories, and I loved it. They're so empowering. And in addition to reading this book, I also just listened to and read a ton of positive, empowering birth stories. So do that as well. And if you want, I will link mine right up here. You can check that out, and I'll put it in the description down below as well. The second thing that I did was I researched and practiced 2 different breathing techniques. So the first one was where you inhale for 4 counts and then you exhale for 6. And the second breathing technique is where you inhale nice and long and then you exhale out your mouth and you make like a low moaning sound, like ooh, kind of a thing. Or you can moo. I've heard some people moo. So I practiced those throughout my pregnancy anytime I felt any kind of discomfort or pain, because if you are pregnant, then you probably know that there definitely are aches and pains that are associated with pregnancy. Like, I had hip pain, I had back pain, period-like cramps, Braxton Hicks cramps. So any time that I was feeling any of those, I would be practicing one of those 2 breathing techniques, because I wanted to make it so that my natural response to pain and discomfort was to breathe in one of those types of ways, so that when I was in labor, I didn't really have to think like, okay, breathe. I wanted to make it so that I would feel a contraction and just start breathing like that. And I would recommend that you do that. I know that there are probably a lot of different breathing techniques. Those are the 2 that I liked. I didn't want to make it like too complicated and flood my head with too many different types of techniques. I figured I would just kind of keep it simple, but definitely do your research, find the breathing techniques that feel good for you, and then practice them throughout your pregnancy. The third thing that I did with my husband, Alex, actually was take a birth class, because I just wanted to make sure that I was getting as much information about labor and birth as possible. And I also wanted like some hands-on coaching. I don't necessarily regret the decision to take the birth class. I think I just wish I would have done a little bit more research about the class that we took, because this class was recommended to me, and so I didn't really do a ton of research. I did a little bit, but I kind of just was like, oh, okay, well, they're recommending it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take it. And it wasn't a bad class, it was a good class, but there were a couple of things that I wanted to get out of the class that I don't really feel like I got. And it was a 1-day class. It was like an 8-hour class. And I initially thought that that would be nice, because it's just like, you go, you take it, and then you're done. but it was a lot of information to absorb in a short period of time. So I think if you want to take a birth class, do it, but I would recommend writing out a few goals or a few things that you're hoping to like take away from the class, and then definitely do your research. Like, don't just find one class and be like, yep, that's the one. I would absolutely look up a few different courses, contact the instructor, let them know these are the things I'm hoping to take away from the class. Does that align with your curriculum? And then based on that, you could probably make a more educated decision about whether or not a birth class is right for you and hopefully your spouse too. Before we get on to the next thing, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and tap that little button right down there. I would love to see you around here more often. Okay, so the next thing that I did was I hired a doula, which I know might not sound like a labor preparation technique, but I hired a doula because I know that their sole job is to be there to support you emotionally and mentally and physically too. Sometimes they will like help with counter pressure, or they'll help like tell your partner how to physically support you. She was great, super wonderful woman, and I definitely felt more calm and less afraid going into labor. Like, not actually when I was in labor, but as labor was approaching, I felt more calm knowing that I would have her there for support, and also knowing that if we needed to go to the hospital because I had a home birth, she would be there to help think through any medical decisions that we maybe would need to make. Would I recommend getting a doula? That is a very personal decision, and I am not 100% sure if I will get a doula if we have another pregnancy. I don't regret it for this first one because, like I said, I do think that it helped a little bit with my mindset going into labor. If a doula is in your budget, and if you really feel like having a doula there for your labor and birth helps you feel more calm and relaxed, then I would say it's worth it. And I think that in that case, you should absolutely go ahead and do it. But if a doula is not in your budget, or if you don't feel that afraid about labor and birth, or maybe your partner is doing a bunch of research to try to emotionally, physically, mentally support you, or if you have a midwife, a lot of midwives are or were doulas before they became midwives, then I think that it's not necessary. I don't really think that I needed my doula because I did end up laboring 100% alone until the very last hour where I pushed out my son. So in hindsight, I could have done it without my doula. It really was just something that made me feel better going into labor beforehand. The next thing that I did was birth ball exercises to help open up my pelvis and also to help baby get down and into an optimal position for birth. And I'll link the class that I did in the description box down below. I absolutely would recommend doing this because it doesn't take a lot of time. Birth balls are pretty cheap, and you can also use your birth ball during labor. So absolutely, I would recommend doing that. And I also would just sit on the birth ball sometimes instead of the couch in that third trimester, because they say that leaning back is not so good because it encourages your baby to be like sunny side up apparently. But if you sit on the birth ball, you kind of just naturally sit in a more upright position. And so that also is supposed to help get baby into like the best position for labor. So I would, a lot of times at night when Alex and I were just watching TV, I would just sit on the birth ball. I would like do my little exercises and then I would just hang out on that thing. So definitely recommend doing that. The sixth thing that I did was I drank red raspberry leaf tea and I ate the dates. I will say, I said the dates. I ate the dates. I will say I did not go super hardcore on this because I know that there are some women in that third trimester that will like drink the raspberry leaf tea like 3 times a day and they'll eat like 6 or however many dates a day that you're supposed to eat. I only drank 1 cup of raspberry leaf tea a day. I actually really enjoy that tea. I just didn't want to overdo it and make myself not like it. And same thing with the dates. Like I didn't go crazy with this because dates are just a lot of sugar. And same thing, like I like dates. So I felt like if I was going too hard on the dates and the tea, then it would feel like torture to me. And also, there are not a ton of studies that like prove that these two things for sure help. Like I think that there's studies that say they might help. I don't think that there's any like hard data that says, you know, consuming those two things will definitely help you in birth and labor. So I would probably do the same thing in future pregnancies where I'd probably drink the tea and eat the dates, but I don't think I would go super hardcore. And so I think that if that makes you feel better, like if that makes you feel like you're doing something proactive to prepare for labor, then go ahead and do it. But I don't think that that's gonna be the thing that like makes or breaks your birth experience. So the last thing that I did to prepare for labor was perineal massage. And if you don't know what that is, just Google it. I would do that again. It's something that I don't know, kind of like the tea and the dates. I don't know if that's gonna be the thing that like really makes that much of a difference because your private parts are designed to stretch to accommodate a baby's head. But I do think it helped a little bit just with preparing for the sensation of it stretching down there. Now, of course, you or your partner, because you can do it by yourself or with a partner, are not going to be able to stretch yourself to the extent that you're going to stretch when you're pushing out your baby. But I think it just helps you kind of wrap your head around what it might feel like a little bit, just so it's not like as shocking. And it's one of those things like it's definitely not going to hurt. And bonus, it's a good way to practice those breathing techniques that I mentioned earlier. So I think that it's something that is worth trying at least. And if you're like, yeah, okay, like I could see myself doing this for a few minutes every night, then go ahead and do it. I probably would do this in future pregnancies. If you plan on trying any of these labor preparation techniques, or if you've already tried some of these, I would love to know. Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and check out the things I did not know about labor and birth, which I'll put right here and in the description box down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!